And I think the more you work on your health, the more intuitive you become with how your body feels and what it needs.
Founder, mother, but what pushed you towards creating Arta, the supplement brand?
I found out I am allergic to the protein found in milk. I had heartburn, so I slept propped up. I had stomach migraines, I had migraines. I just wasn't like other kids. And for a 12-year-old, that's not normal. So I became super passionate and just totally in awe of the power of food.
Was there a moment where you realized that perhaps the wellness industry as a whole wasn't serving people in the best way?
People equated health with size, with weight. So everything was based on how thin you were, your aesthetic. Because of that, that fueled a culture of the extreme diets, the extreme products. Everyone wants to take NAD, but most people need vitamin D first and then fiber. If you're trying to take a ton of supplements, but you're drinking 5 nights a week and you're eating tons of sugar and we're not eating enough fiber, I wouldn't do it. Just don't waste your money.
Actually, nature is what I need rather than 2-hour gym session on the weekend, for instance.
When you think about the discipline of self-care, you can do that in a kind way, because if it were up to our mood and our energy every day, we would never choose anything healthy. I'm a working mom, I'm a founder. The most important thing for me is to have energy for my kids and for my family, and to be able to do what I want to do with my work.
Hello, welcome back to the Health Review. Thank you so much for being here with us today. And today I would like us to focus on the shift that's been happening in the wellness industry over the last maybe year or two, away from those rigid routines that so many of us have been following for a long time, the optimization culture, always doing more, always being busy, and maybe looking at the practices which could help our nervous system, our hormones, connection, all of these things that I think a lot of us are thinking about now. It's very exciting. I'm hoping that today's conversation is going to capture that shift. I am joined by Rhian Stephenson, the founder of ARTAH, the award-winning science-led supplement brand designed to support the foundations of health. Rhian is a nutritional therapist, naturopath and herbalist, a former CEO of one of the UK's leading fitness brands, and a mum of 2 young daughters, which gives her a refreshingly grounded perspective on what sustainable health actually looks like. I think that's something we need to discuss today. Rhian, thank you so much for coming on the Health Review.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited.
I know you're very busy. You're, as I said, got a very successful business going on. You're a mother. So I am very keen to hear all about your routines, how you're balancing things. First, would love to ask you about some of the wellness things you've tried. You've got a very active Instagram account. I was seeing some of the things that you've been trying recently. You like to share the ones that you genuinely think work for you, that you love. What are some of the top things you've tried recently?
So right now, I've really come back to lymphatic massage. I just think it's so relaxing and calming. So I really love that. I love breath work. I'm somebody who probably the thing I need to work the most on is that proactive stress management, which I know we're going to talk about. And I find it just really challenging to meditate. And so for me, the breath work is my meditation. It's easier for me to get into and to keep it up. And then, look, I love things like red light. I love cold facial plunges. I love all that stuff. So
I love that.
Yeah.
And I love that people like yourself who actually, you're educated in health. So you can give us a balanced view on some of these things. Because I know a lot of us would have tried some crazy things when it comes to wellness trends over the years. I went to a lymphatic massage class last night in a sauna, and it was one of the most magical experiences. They basically gave us essential oils and you're rubbing it everywhere. And it honestly feels so good. So I love that you've been trying those things. You've worn many hats in your life, nutritionist, founder, mother. Was it the CEO of Cycle, the fitness? Lots of us, people listening will know about Cycle.
Yeah.
But what pushed you towards creating Arta, the supplement brand?
Yeah, so I've been passionate about nutrition since I was a child because I was chronically ill. And it was one of those illnesses that was really challenging for my mother and for my family because there was nothing kind of wrong with me. We did all the rounds. We saw all the specialists. I did all the tests. And after 10 years, they were like, there's nothing wrong with her. She's fine. But I wasn't fine. I had heartburn, so I slept propped up. And, for a 12-year-old, that's not normal. I had stomach migraines. I had migraines. I was exhausted. I just wasn't like other kids. And it was really hard. And so basically I found out at a later age that I am allergic to the protein found in milk. So I changed my diet and it changed my life. And it changed my life quickly, like pretty much overnight. And by overnight, I mean within 8 to 10 weeks, I was transformed. So I became super passionate and just totally in awe of the power of food, because there's nothing wrong with kind of cow protein for some, but for some, it can make you so unwell. I got so far with just changes to my diet, and then it was really supplementation that took me back to kind of full health. At the time, I was an athlete. I went from no changes in how I trained, from placing kind of like 28th at swim meets to first, and so I was just blown away. And so that really inspired me to get into the world of health. I came to London. I worked in clinical practice for about 8 to 10 years, and then I sidestepped, as you said, and I went to run a fitness brand. When I was in clinic, I always wanted to start my own supplement brand because I loved the formulation side of it. I loved the combinations. At the same time, I found that so many supplements were just very bad quality, didn't have the right forms, didn't have the right amounts. The practitioner brands were good, but hard to access. So I kind of started to think like, oh, I would just really love to create a practitioner-led brand, but it feels chic and it feels very cool. At the same time, then when I went to cycle, so many people were getting fitter, but they weren't necessarily getting healthier because they were going all in on their fitness, which is great, but that there was still that fundamental piece of nutrition that wasn't there. So in the pandemic, I had my first baby, and then that was just kind of a good time to go back to nutrition, which is really my roots.
I love the branding. I love the quality. The focus on quality is what people are looking for now. There's been so many news articles over the last, say, 5 years. How many brands on platforms like Amazon actually don't contain the correct ingredients
or any actives at all,
actives.
So it's a minefield.
A lot of us have spent too much money, wasted money on products that probably don't work
or make you worse.
And what you say about the practitioner one is right. There are some practitioner led brands, but you have to be referred to get them via some kind of practitioner, and you need a special code, and it can be really complex. So I love that you're offering that kind of quality and direct to consumer. I love how slick it looks. It's beautiful. I'm guessing you've seen a lot of people who've been through struggles like yourself. So you had a mystery, I guess, illness, and then when you finally found out what it was, transformational. And I'm sure a lot of people watching or listening would have had a similar realization. And that kind of triggers your mind into this whole path of health and wellness. Oh, if I can do this, what else can I do? Was there a specific moment in your career? So when you've been seeing clients, people who've been coming to you displaying with all sorts of problems in their life, in their health, was there a moment where you realized that perhaps the wellness industry as a whole, health and wellness industry, wasn't serving people in the best way?
I don't know if there was one particular moment, but I think just over time you saw this pattern. And the pattern was that people equated health with size, with weight, right? So everything was based on how thin you were, your aesthetic. So people were really trying so hard to get thin at all costs. And because of that, that fueled a culture of the extreme diets, the extreme products, the crazy things that you hear people do. And then people say that's the wellness industry, when actually the wellness industry at its core are health professionals who are trained, who really are actually trying to make people well. So I think that it's been taken over by social media, by trends, by what celebrities are doing. And so I think that pattern of kind of doing things at all costs to be thin, that had such a toll on our mental health, our hormone health, our physical health, that I just thought it was a really good time to get into the industry and be like, no, this is how we create real health in a sustainable way. Here are all the things that make up health. And by the way, it's going to take time. Like there's no quick fixes. And that's very unglamorous. People don't like that. It's not very trendy, but every nutritionist is going to tell you that it's consistency and habits over time that create true health.
And we're seeing, as I mentioned, I'd love to cover this in this episode about the shift that's happening. It's been coined Health 2.0.
Yeah.
We are thinking less about the hyper-optimization, the crazy morning routines, and actually thinking more about the nervous system regulation. Yeah. Maybe the term biohacking is now being defined in more of a sort of simple, holistic, actual way, rather than all these things you can do in expensive clinics. Why do you think this shift has been happening, particularly in 2025? It felt like that was the kind of turning point for a lot of people, where it was more like, okay, actually nature is what I need, rather than, 2-hour gym session on the weekend, for instance.
Yeah. I think it's all tied up with how extreme we've been for so long, right? We didn't used to understand how important the nervous system was to overall health. And I think now with this push to be thin, to be productive, to be extreme, we've all, especially women, it's just not going to work, right? I could say, okay, my ultimate goal is to be 120 pounds. So I could lose 10 pounds and it would be pretty easy, but hard to maintain. And through that, I would have to kind of isolate myself because I couldn't go out for dinner and see my friends. I need to be really strict with what I ate. I need to train hard. And over time, that's going to add to my stress load. It's going to make me feel disconnected from my friends and family. It's going to probably wreak havoc with my hormones. Then my sleep will. So you kind of realize very quickly that those goals that you thought used to be important or we were told were important don't matter. And they actually don't mean health. And sometimes they can make you feel far worse. Mm-hmm. And I think when you look at also the typical someone like me, so I'm a working mom, mm-hmm. I'm a founder. The most important thing for me is to have energy for my kids and for my family and to be able to do what I want to do with my work. I can't be so extreme with my body weight or my health. I have to do things that make that possible. So I have to do things that balance me so that when my kids are upset or can't sleep and I've had a crazy day and I'm exhausted, I can show up and I can show up with positivity and patience. So understanding that mood is important, sleep. It's not just about your body weight. It's about how well do you feel and can you show up in the way that you want for the things that are important. And so I think that shift has been coming for a really long time and it's a great one.
Do you think we've underestimated as well the power of these simple things? So like getting outside, going for a walk, getting the sunlight, early in the morning, the power of having lunch with a friend, the power of breath work. I feel like a lot of it was just dismissed as like
woo-woo.
Whatever.
It's woo-woo wellness.
Yeah. And now it's like people are actually listening. Are you excited by that?
I'm really excited because we're so disconnected, right? Like even me, I work from home a couple of days a week. And on days that I just wake up, do the hectic part of kids, and then go straight up to my office, I feel so tense by 10 a.m. I feel anxious because I haven't moved. I haven't had any fresh air. So I think people are understanding that there are such small, easy, natural shifts that we can make to get back to how we should be, which is more time on our feet, more time in our body, more time with our friends, our family, our breath. These things are all really important to help to regulate your nervous system. And we've been moving farther and farther away from that and onto screens that I think it's a really welcome shift.
How do you do it though? Because it's hard when you have, you're a CEO or you have your own business and you're growing rapidly and you're working all hours, but then throw in the children. I mean, it's hard just having one of those things because it is all consuming and it takes such effort to really like pull yourself out of those moments, but then throw in like young children, they need you and I guess you have to put them first. So sometimes I guess parents, like their needs come second. What are the things that you do in your life to kind of take those moments? Like, are you scheduling in things?
Yes. So I think it's really important to first say that I don't always do it well. And most of the times I feel like, oh my gosh, like that was so bad. I was so tense. I was so stressed. I was so snappy. So I certainly don't have it all figured out. But what I do know is the more I apply the discipline that I used to have as an athlete to my life now, the better. And I think the word has kind of taken on a meaning that is quite negative. But when you think about the discipline of self-care, you can do that in a kind way, because if it were up to our mood and our energy every day, we would never choose anything healthy. We would never choose anything that really takes care of ourselves because we'd be swept up. I'm too tired to train. I feel like this quick fix for something sweet. The discipline of self-care means that you're proactively doing things to kind of put yourself and your energy at the forefront. And I think it's been interpreted as it means you have to be extreme and punishing. If you can just reset your mind to know that you need to have those boundaries and a disciplined approach to make sure that you can show up how you want, that's something that's really helped me. And I think since I've become a mother, I've realized how important just the consistency of nutrition is, which obviously sounds very obvious, especially for a nutritionist. But when you're young and kind of free. You can train more, you can sleep more. There are other things you can pull, but when those things get taken away, when your time poor and when your sleep is not yours because you've got young kids, the only thing that you are for sure going to do every day is eat and breathe. And so I think that's why, like, making sure that you find some way to make sure that those things are at the forefront are really important. And then when you can train, it's a bonus. When you can sleep more, that's great. But I think with me, I've just become really good at prioritizing the nutrition that I know really fuels me and the supplementation that helps, and then really trying to focus on the breath work, because if I don't proactively manage my stress, then it all starts to fall apart. And I already feel bad because I'm not there as much. I don't do the pickups. My daughters often say, like, why didn't you pick me up? All the other moms do, and my heart just breaks.
Aww.
And I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. But these are things that mothers feel every single day. So to add more kind of blame and shame because you've been snappy, because you haven't managed yourself, it becomes a big deal, right?
And I love what you say about getting your routine right. And it is the kind of accumulation of good habits over a long period of time.
Yeah.
I think it's hard to see that when you're not in it yet. So
Yeah,
if you haven't got those good habits, you can feel quite terrible for a long time. Or say you've got an intolerance to something like you had, or there's just something that you're doing that isn't working for you. Something I realized for myself was once you have that base level of wellness and just general energy, if you go off a little bit off course, so say you have a really stressful time and maybe you've not slept as much, or you've been on holiday and you've indulged a little bit in things that you wouldn't normally have, if you've already had such a long time of base level wellness, it doesn't take long to get back to your base level again. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think the more you work on your kind of health, the more intuitive you become with how your body feels and what it needs, right? So when I was young, I'd wake up and I was like, it's important. I must train every day. And now I know, well, actually, there's days where I know if I train, this is going to put me over the edge, like I'm going to get sick or I'm going to be totally exhausted. And you can really tune into what your body actually needs in that moment. And so that's also one of the joys of becoming in tune with how you feel, but it takes a long time to get there. And we're naturally impatient, right? As soon as we decide we want to be well, or we want to lose 5 pounds, or we want to feel, blah, 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 we're like, I need it now. So we start this really extreme thing on a Monday. If we go kind of off course on a Wednesday, it's over, I'll start again. It takes time, and there's going to be ebbs and flows. And so it's really about being super patient, really kind, and just more observant and less on the judgmental side, because you can say, okay, well, I got home and I ate a whole tub of ice cream and that made me feel terrible. Why did that happen? And then you start to think, well, actually, I didn't eat lunch, or I only had a salad, and for breakfast, I only had a coffee. Oh, of course I ate so you can kind of become more in tune with the reasons why, instead of jumping to, I have no willpower, I'm so terrible, I'll never get there. And so I think it's about having that calmness and the compassion and the patience to really understand that it takes time to be well, because so many of the patterns that shape that are led by how we feel or how we were raised. When I used to be upset, my mom would bake. So every time I'd get upset, I'm like, I want a cookie, right? So you notice things slowly over time that can really help you understand, okay, well, that's why, and maybe I'll try this.
I've noticed, because we're filming this in January, and I've been speaking to a lot of people and seeing a lot of people online sharing their sort of intentions for the year, their routines. And I'm loving that for a lot of people now, it's less about the like, new year, new me, I'm going to lose like all this weight. These things which we've been sort of so focused on are good in some sense, but now it's more of a conversation around, actually, I want to feel more regulated. Yeah. Actually, I want to show up as a better parent. I had a conversation with a friend today who said, like, I want to be a better parent.
Yeah.
And I know what I need. I need to go out in nature more. I need to do more breath work, all similar stuff. And I think the fact that we're all kind of having these realizations is, it's a beautiful shift happening around the same time.
Well, I think it's also really important to understand what works best for you, right? Because there's some people who can be very moderate and it works. And there's some people who actually need a period, not of restriction in a negative way, but of kind of resetting. And I think we really shouldn't shy away from that, because one thing I see really often is people don't want to be too extreme. So they're like, I'll just do everything in moderation. But because we're already so far off where we should be to be quite healthy and balanced, the moderation is still quite out of balance, right?
Yes.
So even if you used to drink 6 times a week and now you're drinking 4, it's great. But how could you feel if actually you said, okay, I'm going to not have any alcohol for 90 days. I just want to see. I want to see how it impacts my mood, my sleep, my patience, my productivity, because there are certain things that I think we cling to that are not healthy, right? Like we know that alcohol, there's no benefit to our health.
I'd love to ask you about biohacking because
Sure.
that is kind of shifting in the way it's being perceived. It was very much a tech bro movement at the
Yes.
start. We had the Dave Aspreys, we had the Gary Breckers, really like showing their 100-step routines and their very specific things they were doing.
Yeah,
But
very expensive.
very expensive. Current data now shows that women actually are making up over 55 to 60% of biohacking clinic clients. Top motivations seem to be to improve sleep, hormone balance, stress, longevity. So those are the reasons why women are kind of getting interested in biohacking. It was seen as a more extreme thing to do. Now there's kind of a refocusing with it where perhaps we don't need to think of biohacking as this, expensive clinic that you go to where you do your cryotherapy, you do your red light. Maybe there are simpler things we can think about with biohacking. What do you think they could be?
100%. I really love that people are getting into biohacking in a more specific way, especially for women. When it comes down to it, what it really means is making those small intentional little changes to how you eat, sleep, move that can make your biology work better for you, right? Because for women especially, we're rhythmical. We have a cycle where every week we change. So the male-centric biohacking is the same rigid protocol every single day. We're not built like that. And if we try that, maybe we'll feel okay for a couple months, but that's not how we're going to be truly optimized. At the same time, women are coming to it because we have a real shift called perimenopause. We have postpartum. We have big shifts in our life where our biology changes massively. So trying to do the same thing we did when we were 22 and single and totally free is not practical. So I think even when you look at the fundamentals of what every biohacker has, is they have good quality nutrition, which includes adequate protein, adequate fiber. They have a focus on stress management, right? Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Some might be techie, some might be just breath work, but that's there. They have a focus on sleep hygiene and they make sure that they sleep well. They have a focus on fitness, which is probably skewed towards muscle, but it's all encompassing, and they're understanding the importance of having strong, healthy muscles, and they take a core kind of stack of supplements. They have very little alcohol, and they kind of have really solid boundaries around kind of how they spend their time. So that's fundamental to everyone. Yes, so some of those men that you mentioned then add on everything, but those are the things that are accessible to everyone. And that really makes up kind of 85-90% of biohacking. Everything else is just on top of that to optimize. If you don't have those, there's no point in spending thousands of pounds on the cryo chambers when you're not even eating that fundamental whole food, protein and fiber rich kind of diet, right?
Do you think a lot of it is like individualized as well? I guess with nutrition and stuff, it does feel in the last few years, the messaging has been around, it's more of an individualized approach going forward.
Yeah.
Like what works for you, as you say, for you, your own experience that you had, finding out that one thing, transformed your health. Do you think that is the most important thing when it comes to biohacking, when it comes to nutrition? It's like really actually finding out what it is that works for you. Do you think testing is important for some of these things?
I think the most important thing is kind of what fundamentally makes up your diet every single day, right? So whether it doesn't really matter what kind of a diet camp you're in, everybody can agree that a diet that's mostly ultra-processed foods is not going to be healthful. You need enough fiber. You need your protein. So that, I think, is the first step. I don't think you should try to jump and find some sort of a magic bullet if you don't have the fundamentals, because so much of it is the fundamentals.
With fiber, it's having a moment, which
Big
is
moment.
Brilliant.
It's back.
It's about time because I guess a lot of focus on protein over the years.
Yeah, your protein popcorn, you have protein cereal, protein.
Everything.
I don't know how you have protein popcorn, but
I
it's
can't
there.
remember the data around how many people. Is it something like 90-something% of people in the UK are not getting enough fiber?
Yeah, it's 1 in 10. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's crazy.
It's crazy. Yeah.
And I think the magic number is
The maximum number is 30 as the minimum. So that's not the optimal, but we know that that's kind of what we should aim to make sure that we're getting every single day. And both adults and kids are only getting about 50% of what they need. So it's a big deal.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
It's a really big
and
deal.
you've launched a product.
I have,
Arta.
Yeah, essential fiber.
Yes. So what was your kind of drive behind launching that?
That.
Yeah.
You got
everything we just said.
That. No, but it's so true, right? One of the things I really wanted to do with Arta is have your fundamentals, right? Because what I find, again, is we tend to want that kind of fancy, kind of sexy thing. Like everyone wants to take NAD, but most people need vitamin D first and then fiber, right? So you really want to give people the opportunity to have the fundamentals. In the UK, we know that, as we just said, only 1 in 10 of us are getting enough fiber. So whilst, of course, I absolutely think you should get it from the food that you eat, I also know from being in practice that it can take a really long time to change your diet in a meaningful and sustainable way. So in the interim, having a good quality kind of multi-fiber type supplement that's low FODMAP can be incredibly helpful. So I think it's really important to kind of fill those gaps where you can, whilst working towards finding ways to get it into your diet in a more sustainable way, which some people find easy and some people find it really, really hard.
Yeah, I think adding in a supplement for that is a really good idea because it is quite overwhelming. And if you open your fridge and count, even if you think you're doing a lot, usually it's not as much fiber as you think you're getting.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. If you're enjoying today's episode, please do subscribe or give it a follow so we can keep giving you excellent content and bringing on amazing guests that hopefully you're loving on the Health Review podcast. Now, back to the show. In terms of like detoxing, though, we know that fiber is really important for the gut. I've personally been very interested in this because I've had gut issues over the past and things like just getting rid of those hormones, things that we don't.
It's important for estrogen.
Estrogen detox for women, hugely important. How does that work?
Fiber is kind of best known for gut health, but as you say, it has a critical role in the detoxification pathways because our stool is one of the ways that we can bind and excrete things like microplastics, right? So when you look at hormone detoxification, you need to be having a regular bowel movement every day, but you also need a healthy microbiome, and fiber will do both because prebiotic fiber especially feeds the beneficial microbes in our gut, and having a healthy gut microbiome is key to the detoxification of estrogen. So it's really important for hormone health. And then it's also important for kind of your general health and inflammation and making sure that your blood sugar is more balanced, your appetite is in check, and everything kind of feeds into everything else.
That makes total sense because I think what we've thought about with detox is always like the liver.
Of course.
So you hear people say, oh, you know, I had a bingy weekend with alcohol, got to detox my liver, got to have lots of water. And I don't think people realize that actually the gut is also a really significant part of that detoxification process. So I love that the kind of education is getting out there now with fiber, and we're trying to make it more exciting. I guess people have never thought
Making
fiber is very exciting. So I think it's great that you've dropped a product in that space. In terms of lifestyle factors that can affect our hormones, we know there are many. But our modern life isn't great for our hormones.
Yeah, it's really tough.
Not only the cortisol, the nervous system stuff we've mentioned, but we've got the microplastics. We've got all of the, I guess, UPFs and things that can kind of interfere things. What are you seeing? So with potentially clients who come in, what kind of hormonal things are you seeing and how would you resolve them?
So I think when it comes to the lifestyle factors that can really impact our hormones, there's probably 4 main ones. The first is obviously your diet and the quality and the consistency of it. So things like, as you just said, your fiber intake, and that's one that's kind of big and quite obvious. But then there's also smaller things, like you've got so many people who think they're doing it all right. And in theory, everything they're eating in isolation is good. But what I see a lot of is women especially, they'll get into fasting. And so they'll be tired, they're stressed, they're busy, they exercise, and then they have coffee. And then they go into lunch and then they have a salad. And whilst salad is good, obviously, it's not kind of a salad that's hugely rich in lentils and chickpeas and nuts. It's a salad, right? And then they have more coffee, then they're really stressed. So whilst the things they're getting are good, it's not enough of it. The timing doesn't really support their cortisol, their stress hormones. So there's those big things, and then there's the smaller ones kind of like that. Number 2 is obviously chronic stress, which we've talked about. This impacts us in so many ways. In the direct ways, it can throw off our hormones. It can cause havoc with our microbiome. It makes us less resilient to infection. It's problematic for our sleep. And then, of course, you have the knock-on effect of all of that. So if you're not sleeping well, then over time, that's going to impact how you think, how you feel, how you function, how stable your blood sugar is. So there's kind of the direct effects of it, and then those things that happen as a knock-on. The third, I'd say, probably is sleep. And then the fourth is just the deficiencies, right? We know that vitamin D is so important. Only 17% of adults are taking a supplement, even though the guideline is that all adults should. We know that people aren't moving enough. So in terms of, we know that in the UK, only 50% of us are hitting the cardiovascular guidelines, but only 10% the strength. So not only do we lead quite a sedentary lifestyle, but then we're not getting enough of those really important types of fitness for our overall health. So there's just so many things that can compound over time that can really just make our hormonal landscape a little more challenging.
Yeah, it's a shame. It feels like we've lost that connection to how we evolved.
Yeah.
And that's, I guess, part of it, isn't it? It's going back to, you know, what would we have done 1,000 years ago to really thrive? And although we would have faced other stresses, a lot of it would have been, I guess, intense moments of exercise, cardio perhaps, strength, building things, lifting things, and then like lots of time in rest and digest.
Yeah.
And it feels like we're not hitting either very well.
Yeah.
So we're not in rest and digest, and we're also not doing those intense bursts of exercise and strength that we also would have done.
Yeah.
So it's really tricky. And I guess it just means that we have to really force ourselves into these situations that don't necessarily align with our daily routines right now.
Yeah.
We know that a lot of women feel like they're doing everything right in the landscape that we've just spoken about.
Yeah.
So they're trying. It's like you're fighting all of these things that are throwing at you, but yet they still feel very wired and tired. Would you say that is linked to, for some women, the hormonal imbalances? And I don't even know if imbalances is the right word anymore, but kind of dysregulation in the body, I guess.
Yeah. I think when you're feeling kind of that tired but wired, that's a sign of chronic stress. Usually at night when you feel really tired but you're totally alert, that's high cortisol. Your cortisol should be high in the morning when you wake up, and then it should naturally fall. And that falling cortisol at night should help us sleep. But when we're stressed at night, whether it's because we've had a crazy night with our kids, or we're on our emails, or we're having a fight with our partner, or even if we're watching a very kind of stressful film, that can really spike our cortisol. And unless you're doing things, that's why sleep hygiene became so popular, right? Just like no screens at night, having some time to like really reset from when you come home to when you get into your bed. It's so important to have the routine of really winding down at night. For some people, it's mindfulness. For some, it's a walk. It doesn't matter. It just needs to suit you, right? Me, sometimes when I do a stressful night with my kids and I'm like really flipped on from work, I lay down, I get my legs up the wall, right? That's really great for helping to activate the parasympathetic nervous system. And I just try to breathe, right? And even that 5 minutes really helps me just calm down. And I start to be like, oh, I'm quite tired actually. So finding some way to really shift your gears at night, I think, is really fundamental to balancing that. And then when you're doing that, and if you're finding that you're still having a hard time, there's other things, of course. We drink a ton of caffeine. What time of day are you having your last cup of coffee? Are you having alcohol at night? Are you having really sugary sweets at night? You know, all of these things can make us feel quite wired. Are you eating enough in your day? So there's lots of things you can look at. When I was at Cycle, I used to teach the 6:30 class on a Wednesday night, and it was super intense, 1 hour, and I did not sleep because I was doing super intense cardio at night, and I just couldn't fall asleep till 1 or 2. I was wired, right? So there's little shifts that you can do, that you can make, that can over time kind of get you back into that more regulated state.
And I guess that has like just so many different benefits, including gut health.
Of course, yeah.
Because the vagus nerve, and that's something I've been trying to work on myself. I don't know if you find this as well, but when I'm a bit more regulated and doing the breath work and having moments of stillness, my digestion gets better.
Much better.
And you don't realize these things. It's all linked, you know.
Everything gets better. Everything. Yeah.
It's amazing to have those realizations. I'd love to ask you about sort of supplements in general.
Yeah.
So you are now an expert in this field, and with the success of Arta, it feels like you're the perfect person to ask about it. But in terms of to know what you should be taking, how do we figure that out? Because I think a lot of us just experiment. We try different things. Perhaps we don't stick at things for long enough. Sometimes I'll do that. I'll get, see something on Instagram and be like, oh, I want to try that. Try it for 3 weeks and then forget about it. Or, think nothing's changed, so I'll stop. So supplements are to supplement our diet.
Yeah,
so
100%.
I guess that's the thing. Like, how do you not feel overwhelmed? How do you know what are the top things we should be taking?
Yeah, so I think a really safe place to start right now is vitamin D, right? We know that everybody should be taking that. So when you look at the things that you could take, there's tons, there's thousands out there, right? There's collagen, there's NAD, there's magnesium. But when you take a step back and see like, what are we actually not getting enough of on the day to day? It's things like your vitamin D, magnesium, and omega-3s, right? So you really want to work on those fundamentals. I think also it's important to have realistic expectations. They're not a magic bullet. Sometimes, look, you can take mag and be like, oh my God, I slept so there are some ones that you feel right then and there, but other things like vitamin D, you're probably not going to feel that in that moment. You'll probably be like, oh, I took vitamin D this year and I actually didn't get sick and I wasn't as tired, right? So there's things that happen over time. So having realistic expectations is really important. It is hard. So that's why at Arta, you can book a consultation for free with our head of nutrition. She'll help you pick. She'll kind of go through where you are. So I think looking for brands that offer that can be really helpful because, again, we tend to go for the glamorous ones, the skin supplements, the hair supplements, when actually you can take all of that. But if your vitamin D is low, it's not going to work, right? So it's understanding what those fundamentals are. And then it's about where you are, right? What's your goal? What's your life kind of phase? Is there anything you're having a hard time with? So if you're someone who's really active, then you're looking at like, oh, maybe I'll try some of the creatine, again, with realistic expectations, because one of the issues is that when the media gets a hold of something, they present it like it's a magic bullet, right? And so the creatine kind of the creatine hype is a good example of that because it is great. I think it's fantastic. We have it. I take it, but it's not going to work overnight and it's not going to solve all of your issues, right? It takes about 1 month to kind of get your stores up and then you can optimize from there. But it works best if you're also working out, right? And as we said, only 10% of us are using our muscles as much as we should. So there's nuances there where you really should do it to complement the lifestyle changes that you're already trying to implement. And that's when they're always going to work the best. And you'll be like, wow, that's really helped. If you're trying to take a ton of supplements, but you're drinking 5 nights a week and you're eating tons of sugar and we're not eating enough fiber, it's I wouldn't do it. Just don't waste your money.
No, it's so true.
Yeah. But then there's other things. So like fiber is a really good example. And this is a good example because so many of us, when we try to eat foods that are high in fiber, we're actually really uncomfortable. That's usually because the less fiber we eat, the more kind of out of balance our microbiome is. So then when you add in fiber, it can feel quite active, right? So you'll hear a lot of women in particular say, well, I try to eat beans and lentils, but like they make me bloated and I have terrible wind. And so they avoid them, but actually those are the exact foods that they should be eating. So having a fiber supplement that you can titrate up, that you can do slowly, that you can use over time, that's low FODMAP, can actually be incredibly helpful to help you fill that gap, build your microbiome back up, build your fiber tolerance back up, whilst you're also slowly trying to introduce things in your diet. Because again, we tend to be quite impatient. So we go from having only 10 grams a day to 40 and you just feel terrible.
Yeah.
Right?
And then
you
think,
have to be patient.
Fiber's no good for me. And that's
I
terrible.
tried fiber. It made me feel terrible. And
Yeah.
like, oh,
I
no,
love
please,
that's such a good
no.
suggestion, actually, to
Just go low and slow.
use a supplement like yours
Yeah.
and slowly build it up to a point where your gut gets comfortable with that. And then you can kind of also throw in some more fiber rich foods, because as someone who's had a lot of gut issues, it's horrible when you get all the bloating.
It's horrible.
The mind and gut connection is so
foggy,
solid. I think for a lot of people, they are thinking of that. They're thinking of not only the bloating but the mental health side of it. That it can make you feel so low in energy and so low. So I think that's really great. And I also love that you do the consultation. That is amazing.
Yeah, it's a game changer. It's really helpful because what we see, we kind of usually see one of two things. One is that people don't take anything because they don't know where to start. Or they're taking like 10 things, 15, like so many supplements. And we really strip it back and say, okay, let's start with this, see how you go. And then we can add in more, but like this is too much. And so it's really about helping you understand what are the most important things to do first. Because again, once we identify all the things that we want to fix, we kind of want to fix them all at once, but it's overwhelming, right? To fix our diet, our supplements, our sleep, our stress, our mornings, our light, it's a lot to do all at once. So we need to be a little bit more patient and try to go slower, and know that over time, that's probably going to be a more sustainable way to get there.
Definitely. I love that. We're obviously in the new year now, and there were a lot of trends, I guess, and practices that happened in 2025. Are there any sort of wellness practices that you think we should just throw in the bin?
I'm not a fan of the quick fixes like okra water or Ozempic, like things like that, where you're trying to get that magic kind of weight loss benefit. I think those kinds of trends are the worst, right? Because you're, again, ignoring your overall diet quality. You're looking for one thing to help you to lose weight, and you're not paying attention to your overall kind of health and happiness. So I think that's one. I think wearables are a double-edged sword. So I think they're fantastic. I rate them. But people get really obsessively tracking their sleep and their blood sugar and their spikes and being like, an apple spiked me. I'm like, it's supposed to spike you. You know, there is there is sugar in it. It's okay. Like we can handle that. So being obsessive over the metrics when actually they're really good to see your overall pattern. I've worn them, and I'm someone who's not that great with them because I do get obsessive because I was an athlete where we tracked everything. And there's nothing worse than having a night where you're breastfeeding all night, you feel terrible, and you've got this red, like, terrible. I don't need to see that, right? So there's some times where they can be incredibly helpful. There's some times where I think they can just put you over the edge and make health really unenjoyable and add to your mental stress.
That's such a good point. Yeah. I've noticed when people say, oh, you shouldn't wake up and just check social media straight away. I'm like, social media? I'm checking my my ring.
You're like, did I recover?
Just loving, I love the hormonal tracking. I love to know where you are, you're approaching ovulation. I love it. It's helpful, but yes, very much a double-edged sword. You don't necessarily want your first thought of the day to be like, what are my stats?
Well, or look, it's totally fine, but if you feel good, right? Because we don't always feel bad if we don't sleep. Sometimes we feel fine. If you feel good and you're like, oh, I'm in a good mood, and then you look at your wearable and you're so obsessed with getting like the perfect score and being optimal and being well, that then makes you feel like, oh God, I'm stressed. What am I going to do now? That's when it starts to get just a little bit much.
Yeah, we shouldn't
Really
be focusing so much on it. If anyone out there listening, watching right now is feeling a bit overwhelmed by the wellness content, there is a lot on social media. What do you think would be some good advice for them to sort of reset their health, 2026, things they can do, fundamentals that will make them feel better?
So this is really boring, but I think it's so important because when you're overwhelmed, it's because you probably know you've got a lot of things that you want to do, but you have no idea where you should start. Do a health audit. Like just spend just wait, just do 2 weeks and track how you're sleeping, what your schedule is, what you're eating. You're going to see patterns, and track it not to judge or be like, oh my God, I'm eating so many calories. Don't count your calories. Don't count that. It's all about seeing your overall pattern, because from there, you'll probably be able to see really easily 4 or 5 things that you can change like that. And I think that that is a really powerful place for you to start to make sure that it works for you, because there's so many things out there. But if you don't know what's going on with your own health and your own patterns and habits, which so many of us don't. I mean, I'm someone who I love coffee so much. As a nutritionist, if you ask me how many I had a day, I'll probably say 2, because mentally I like to have 2. And when I'm being good, I have 2. But what I know is in reality, when I get really stressed and overtired, I'm having 4 or 5 easy. That can slip up really easily. So when you can tune into being like, actually, my coffee's been going up, I'm getting anxious at night, you can kind of see all those patterns where actually there might be some big ones, but there's probably 4 or 5 small ones that you can shift.
For Arta going forward.
Yes.
Big plans, I'm sure. You guys are everywhere. Honestly, amazing. Like you're popping up on all the respectable health websites.
Great.
Are you in Planet Organic as well? I think
we're in Whole Foods.
Whole Foods,
Yeah.
that's right. Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Amazing.
Whole Foods, Boots, Selfridges, Health, W Wellness. Obviously, our own site.
Yeah.
It's good to support a brand's own site as well.
Yeah.
It's really important.
Absolutely.
But yeah.
Amazing. What are your plans with the brand? Just curious.
So we have a couple really exciting new products that are coming out this year, and a territory expansion that is coming soon.
How exciting. A busy woman, I'm
Busy.
sure.
Lord help me. I'm going to be doing a lot of breath work this year.
Oh, yes. I think that's a good note for everyone as well.
Yeah.
Breath work is so powerful. For people who want to find Arta, I'm guessing the name is quite unique, so it's quite easy to find.
Yeah. It's ARTAH.co.
Amazing. Rhian, thank you so much.
Thank you so
for
much.
taking time out of your busy schedule
Of
to come on
course.
the
Thank
Health
you for
Review.
having me.
Loved it.